My name's Tough. I've been meaning to make a video like this for a long time now. Honestly, something like a decade. But I guess life happens, projects get postponed, and deadlines just creep away. To put things simply, I want to make a game. But truth be told, I have made games. A lot of games. My PC's file system is a graveyard of games. I have made procedural games, strategy games, card games, whatever this is. Multiplayer action games, multiplayer not-so-action games, and even lower-budget vampire survivors with an added twist of AI-generated nightmare fuel. And of course, platformers. So, needless to say, I love game dev. I think it is the perfect medium to blend both art and engineering. Honestly, I think game dev is my life passion, but there is one thing you might notice about all of my projects. They aren't exactly finished, or polished, or good. For a long time, I was content making things that would never see the light of day. But it's about time I changed that. I want to make a good game, a game worthy of publishing. But that's easier said than done. To me, the perfect game is one that feels fresh every time you play, where each session brings something new and unique. It offers a world that players can get lost in, with a story that leaves an impression. I know that a lot of people would say that the perfect game doesn't exist, like I'm describing some kind of a cryptid, but I would argue that the perfect game does exist. It is just subjective. And my perfect game is a sandbox. The figurative one. Emergent gameplay thrives in sandboxes, and for me, that's always been the crown jewel of game dev. People want to play a game the way they want to play it. It is an elusive concept, like trying to catch lightning in a bottle, but there's a couple of cheat codes to that process. For example, you can simply induce emergent gameplay by adding other players. And yeah, I know I just kinda technically called multiplayer a simple inclusion. Cue many years of despair. So now that I have established some expectations of game feel, I should probably decide on what kind of game to actually make. Around the time that I was brainstorming this endeavor, I was playing two of my favorite games, Valheim and World of Warcraft Classic. Obviously, Valheim is an awesome game. You get to explore a mysterious world with your friends, sail the high seas, fight waves of mobs, and solve the game at your own speed. But something about World of Warcraft's combat system is so masterful. It is simple yet complex. It is mechanically strategic and emergent. It is rewarding and punishing. Not to mention, it is incredibly addicting. Nothing beats the dopamine of pulling an entire dungeon worth of mobs and watching your health bar flicker as your healer has a heart attack, and numbers explode across your screen as your cleave combination procs. So I got to thinking, why can't I have the best of both worlds? The enjoyable adventure of Valheim with a small group of friends, and the thrilling adrenaline of World of Warcraft style combat. So it begins, with the asset store. Now I know what you're thinking. Oh, he's just gonna make an asset flip. Oh, this isn't real indie game dev. And to be honest, this is one of my biggest insecurities about being a game dev. For some of you who don't know, the asset store is a digital platform where creators can sell game assets. Developers or designers can then buy these assets and use them in their games. An example of this would be world scenery, or character animations, or sound effects. Since these assets are often well known or seen frequently, it is common for them to be associated with projects deemed scams. They use these assets as a means of demonstrating something to show, go into early access, collect some supporter money, and then launch poorly made garbage or even nothing at all. So I'm very aware of how it looks to use third-party assets in my game. But the honest truth of it is, I'm only one person. I don't have a team that I can dispatch to make character prototypes or animations or world scenery. My bandwidth is very limited. Every second I spend on this project is the only second spent on this project. There is no one else. Just me. It is extremely hard not to compare myself to other incredible indie game devs in the space, like Concerned Ape for example. Developers like him have shown that it is possible to create everything yourself, and to be honest, I do hold on to some hope that I will eventually replace every third-party asset in my game with one created by myself. But today, for my own sanity and for the ability to make some tenable progress, I need to use these third-party assets. It is a hard concession for me to make. I even feel a little embarrassed about it. But it is just reality. Now, I won't lie. Giving myself permission to use the asset store felt a lot like a parent letting their kid loose in a candy store. Except this kid has adult money, and some expensive taste.
Look at Augustus.
Don't worry, he can't drink it all.
Augustus, please, don't do that. Please, I beg you, Augustus! My
Augustus, grab this.
Looks like he's drowning.
Dive in, save him!
Oh, it's too late.
Too late!
He's had it now, the suction's got him.
Augustus, come back! He can't swim!
There's no better time to learn.
There's his coat going up the pipe.
Alright, I'm only half joking. I didn't go that crazy. But I did lean into the asset store. I knew that the game I had in mind to make was a massive endeavor, the kind I would normally steer a dev away from. But I'm a glutton for punishment, and I had plans to ease the load as much as possible. I could use a pre-made system for my character controller, a pre-made system for my multiplayer, a pre-made system for my inventory system, and a pre-made system for my combat mechanics. However, I learned very quickly the insanity that is system integration. Put simply, the combat system needs to integrate with the inventory system needs to integrate with the character controller needs to integrate with the multiplayer system, and none of these systems were built with each other in mind. Very quickly, things spiral into spaghetti, and I became a master spaghetti chef. The character controller asset I was using already came with a Photon Pun multiplayer integration, but it was glitchy at best, and I knew I never wanted to use Photon Pun in a production environment for the game I had in mind. Then Unity released their official implementation of a networking framework called Unity Netcode for Game Objects. And yeah, that really dates how long I've been working on this project. I tried to write my own integration to replace the Photon Pun integration using this new framework, which sort of worked, but quickly bloated into nearly rewriting the entire character controller package in the first place. I was also constantly having problems with my inventory system. The expectations I had for it weren't aligning with the expectations the creator had. So I had the idea to start trimming the fat. I knew that I was juggling too much. I felt like a librarian who was having to memorize every book in their library while also cutting out and gluing in new pages to make every book tie into each other so that my entire library became one big confusing extended universe. Instead, I had to start simple, with only one book. I could include small pieces of it at a time so that I fully understood the impact of each page. That way, I would know the reasoning behind each page's existence and the consequences of changing them. This resulted in a much slimmer codebase that I felt more confident in. However, peeling back the layers of these systems confronted me with the stark reality that I didn't need these pre-made systems at all. I was removing all their fanciness and generic capabilities. These assets marketed themselves with so many fantastical features, but I only needed them for their fundamental concepts, such as a character controller with states, or an inventory system backed by an item database. I realized I had let myself be so distracted by the nice-to-haves and cool gadgets that these tools offered that I had forgotten one of the most valuable software engineering principles: MVP, minimum viable product. It is the idea that instead of building the most complex version of something, you first start with the simplest version that actually works. Not only does this provide you with a strong foundation, but it also lets you identify flaws in your ideas before you waste dozens or hundreds of hours fleshing them out. And so I started again. This time, it was going to be my own code, and a rigid philosophy of sticking to the fundamentals, no distractions. Now, this is probably where I could have started with this whole video, but I felt like it was important to include everything that had led up to this. In reality, this was years of doing the wrong things. I think I described it to my sister the best when I was telling her the feelings I have about this project. It's like climbing a mountain, and once you reach the peak, you look out and you see this incredible view of 1,000 other mountains to come. It is a feeling of both pride and crushing defeat. Pride for solving the problem, or coming to a certain epiphany, defeat in the realization of what is to come. There was also this sense of wasted time. I had studied so many systems and frameworks that I would never use, and wrote so much code that would never see production. I always give my projects code names, so you might understand why it felt fitting to give this one the name Project Sisyphus. I began Project Sisyphus with a mindset that this was going to be it, my make or break. And with that in mind, I knew it was going to be an iterative process of starting small, testing what I had, and then growing from there. I wasn't going to pull in massive libraries and just start slap chopping things together as if my deadline was tomorrow. Time was my only ally on this project, and I was going to use it liberally. First, I started with my character controller. There are many different ways to create a character controller, but what exactly is a character controller? Well, that depends on your granularity. At its most fundamental level, a character controller is the means by which input moves a character. The character can walk forwards, backwards, and left to right. As such, we have a 2D vector. This 2D vector enters the character controller as input, and as output we receive a value that describes how the input impacts character movement. Then this output is checked for collisions to determine whether this movement is viable in the world. If it is, the player moves. Otherwise, they don't. So this is the fundamental flow of the character controller's locomotion. But as a next layer, we need to consider the different states that the character might be in. What are the character controller's behaviors when the player is idle, walking, running, or jumping? Each of these introduce a series of conditions that can spiral out of control into seriously unmaintainable code. So we use something called a state machine. A state machine is a tool that will track the current state of the character at all times, and handle its transitions between the states. But most importantly, it allows each state of the character to become encapsulated. For example, the behavior of the walking state will never interfere with the behavior of the idle state, and vice versa. However, this leads to a question of redundancy. What if you want the walking state to share some fundamental truths with the running state? For instance, the player should be able to jump from both the walking and running state. The commonality is that both states are considered grounded, and when the character is grounded, they should be allowed to jump. But we don't want to constantly have to repeat ourselves and tell every grounded state in the game that it has the ability to transition to the jump state. Instead, we introduce a hierarchy of states, where states themselves can be state machines. Let's start with two states, grounded and airborne. For now, grounded will have two options. If the player is grounded, they're either idle or walking. And for airborne, the player is either jumping or falling. In the grounded state machine, by default, let's enter the idle state. We enter the walking state when the condition of keyboard input is met. Otherwise, we enter the idle state. In the airborne state machine, by default, let's enter the fall state. We are no longer considered jumping if the player's movement in the Y direction becomes negative. Instead, we are falling. And there is no transition from falling to jumping because you should only ever jump from a grounded state, which will never occur in the airborne machine. We can transition between the two machines by checking something simple like whether or not the character is touching the floor, and if it is there an input being pressed that should cause the character to jump? From there, the transitions we establish within the machine will handle the rest. Now, this is a very high-level approach to the design of these systems, and I never really intended these videos to be a tutorial of sorts, but if you're interested in learning more about the innards of these systems, please leave a comment below to let me know. The last layer to this character controller is an ability system. Characters can perform abilities and actions that will impact the ways they are controlled. For example, what if we want to include an ability for the character to leap across a room and smash into the ground? Or perhaps the character should spin in a circle and deal periodic damage to enemies like a tornado. These ideas for abilities are quite flashy, but they share many things in common with the most basic abilities. So let's begin by describing what an ability is. Fundamentally, all abilities have a cooldown and an active period. There are other considerations like whether the ability should require a target, or if the ability has a casting time before it is activated, or maybe if the ability is channeled. But most importantly, how often can the ability be used, known as the cooldown, and when the ability is doing its effect, how long is that effect, known as the active period. Let's break down the auto attack ability as an example. We will design the auto attack to have a cooldown of 2 seconds with an active period of 1.5 seconds. This means every 2 seconds the character will perform an auto attack, and each auto attack will last the duration of 1.5 seconds. The character begins their attack animation, finishes the attack animation after 1.5 seconds, and then waits half a second before the next attack begins. Now let's consider our character controller. The character should be able to perform the auto attack ability in any state, and should adhere to the logic of that state during its active period. But what about those fancy abilities we described earlier, like a leap? For that case, we are saying the ability is controlling the character, and our character controller will pass responsibility to the ability by entering a third state called override. So when leap enters its activation period, we alert our character controller to enter the overridden state and let the ability do whatever it must for the duration of the active period. And just like that, we now have some great fundamentals for our game. And the best part about it, I actually know how it all works, compared to the previous mess. I also went ahead and added attributes, which we can think of as numbers that modify our character's behaviors, like attack speed, attack damage, or cast speed. I wanted abilities to modify these attribute values, like a spell that can increase your attack speed for a few seconds. To accomplish that, I added buffs and debuffs, which are monitored and can stack. For example, an ignite ability might periodically burn an enemy for 2 damage over some duration. And now, it's actually starting to feel like a playable combat prototype. Obviously, there are problems, but the foundation is great, and I'm really excited to continue fleshing it out. I have so many cool ideas, and I can't wait to see the pieces fall in place. Lastly, I want to thank everyone for watching this video until the end. I've never done this kind of thing before, and I don't have high expectations for what is to come out of it, but I figured videos like this might increase my motivation and help keep me on track. This project is a pipe dream, but I really enjoy it. And so if you like this kind of stuff too, please like, subscribe, and follow along for more. The next video will introduce a modular character graphics system, as well as equipment and items. I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks again, and bye.